Hello, I am the proactive caregiver and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. Today, I want to talk to you about navigating care stages within family dynamics. In my experience, first, the caregiver has to acknowledge and appreciate that they are caregivers. Soon after, they have to learn about how the caregiver industry is set up. And soon after that, they begin to learn how to circumvent the system. In this episode, I want to expand a bit more from the previous episode with the Caregiver Navigator, Dura Sims. So let's tune in. As a family caregiver, we are already struggling to adapt to a role that we, most cases, never expected to be in. But then you bring in the family dynamics, and there's multiple caregiving roles because everybody fulfills one thing or another or several things at one time. This may be challenging in itself, but once the caregiver gets to the point in their stages where they need to go outside of family dynamics to a caregiver industry that is very hard to understand, that's when a lot more stress comes in. Family caregivers already struggle to get on the same page and find that cohesive environment that works because we are dealing with multiple roles. But even within those roles, we will eventually reach that point in our caregiving family life that we recognize we need help. We can't do it all, or we reach a level of care that we can't provide ourselves. That pushes us to go outside of the family dynamics and into a caregiving industry that is not easy to understand. And when we do finally feel like we're understanding how things are set up and how they work, we're soon having to figure out how to get behind the system or ahead of the game, or how to go around some of the rules that don't seem like they're hard and fast for everyone involved. When a family caregiver realizes they are in over their head, it's usually because of reaching that breaking point. But if we spend the time to have the conversations with other caregivers, stay socializing and not allow isolation to take over, we do it to ourselves. When we think they won't understand what we're going through, we're just going to pull back and we're just going to figure this out on our own. That's usually where we kind of go off the rails. It's kind of where I did. Unfortunately, this is where caregivers find that dark area of caregiving. We are isolated, we are depressed, we are lost, we are frustrated, we are approaching resentment to the level that we are fighting with our loved one, and it doesn't help anybody. Whether you're a professional like Dura Sims from the previous episode of changing the caregiver navigation, or a family caregiver, wondering what in the world did I get myself into and who is going to come to the rescue, is so common. That's what happens with the way the industry is designed now. So what happens when we reach that point? Well, the best thing we can all do is, one, say it out loud. I cannot do more than I already have done. Then accept that you are human. There are resources out there that are designed to help us. There are people like Dura Sims that are caregiver navigators. Now, I want you to understand the difference between a caregiver navigator and possibly the senior advisors that are out there. The navigator like Dura Sims knows your situation that you're dealing with from beginning to end. So she knows how to navigate you into different sources by the level or the stage that you're in. Coming from the background with hospice, she knows where you are in that situation and where you're headed. She's also going to help you decide and understand what are the next choices to make, what are the next changes that have to take place either in home or transitioning my loved one outside of the home to continue their care. The difference between someone like Dura Sims as a caregiver navigator and that senior advisor is a senior advisor is typically available to give you information about the caregiver industry in terms of assisted living and where to go. They are very helpful, very necessary, but there's still the difference because someone like Dura Sims in the caregiver navigation role is dealing with more than just the assisted living side. We usually learn that these services are available because we are in that breaking point. We are in that situation where we are just going, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too hard to deal with. Or your body is screaming out because you are physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted, and you're still not acknowledging your limitations on what needs to be done to take care of your loved one. This is also all more the reason to make sure that you as a caregiver is continuing to socialize. Go to the support groups, online or in person. Keep connecting with other caregivers because unfortunately, we're the ones that are going to share the information to help each other more so than finding that information outside. So many other resources that are available don't market or advertise in a way that it reaches caregivers. And even when they do, on the very limited ways that they're able to, by the time you're hearing about it, what do we do as caregivers? Well, there is fear, denial, and avoidance. I don't need that right now. I'll get to it later. Our situation isn't there yet. So we can stick our head in the sand and say, I'm not going to need that for much longer. But no one knows what's going to happen. No one knows how well our loved ones are going to manage day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. That time seems to roll around faster than we ever expected, and then we are in panic mode. Unless you know someone like Dura Sims that can help navigate you from stage to stage to stage to end stage. These are the moments that I look back on now, wishing I would have known and met Dura far sooner than I had. Because a lot of the navigation that I was doing was driven based off of the knowledge I had and the desire, the curiosity that I wanted to figure things out myself. For me, and I know I'm different, I'm not like most caregivers, I wanted to know why things were set up the way they were. What is their purpose? And a lot of times that purpose circled back around to making a profit. Because through all of the sales pitches that are out there in the caregiver industry, they don't really understand the emotions that caregivers are going through, nor do they understand the limitation of our budgets. When someone is stepping away from their career and a line of income to care for their loved one, doing everything they can to the best of their abilities, we don't always have the resources, the means to get some of the other resources that are out there. But if you stay in touch, socializing, going to support groups, finding people that are like Dura Sims as the caregiver navigator she is, then you have a valuable resource to rely on. Look, we're not supposed to know everything. We're not going to know everything, which is why we are guided towards people like Dura. This is why I was guided towards her. I got a chance to meet Dura outside of my need as a caregiver, but realizing, wow, this is a valuable resource that many caregivers don't know is out there. Another reason I wanted to bring this to you is that even though we have to learn how to evolve as family caregivers, someone like Dura Sims as the professional caregiver navigator, even Dura struggled and had her own personal challenges when it came time to care for her mother. And if someone in the professional industry who knows so much information also struggles, then why do we think as family caregivers we should either know better or do more? Balancing our limitations and filling in the gaps with navigators that can help us along the way is a reminder that we are stronger together. So as you're reaching this stage of your caregiving role, maybe you haven't acknowledged it yet, so maybe it's time to take a check-in or reflection of, where are we in this role? What have I been doing? What am I struggling with? What else is there on the stages ahead? Asking that question might feel scary. It might make you feel a little bit of anxiety to even consider it. But take a deep breath. And remember, you don't have to figure it out alone. You don't have to know all the details. There are others that can step in to help you. The healthcare industry is designed, in many cases, to respond in emergencies. The caregiver industry is designed to respond when we can no longer meet the needs of our loved one. Understanding what those needs are, and then understanding where you can go to fulfill those needs is vital. Because the more you understand, the more decisions you're going to have to make, but the more comfortable you feel with those decisions, the better care your loved one will receive, and the sooner they will receive it. Because just as I've heard many caregivers saying, I didn't know that hospice was more than just end of life, I can also say, I didn't know there were services out there during my years of caregiving, like Dura Sims caregiving navigation services. The purpose of this service or those services are so that we can rely on others to help us, to fill in those gaps, instead of finding emergency services, like going to the hospital when we really needed these other services in a different sort of care setting. Supplementing hospice services with the current care that you have at home may be beneficial. I'm hearing from others that I could do these things, I should do these things, but I don't really know. All of this information is overwhelming. Time out. Why don't we get in touch with a caregiver navigator that can explain this information and break it down piece by piece to make it not feel so overwhelming? So, if you're finding yourself in this situation, stop and reflect. Then take a deep breath, maybe a couple, reassess, and then reach out to your caregiver navigator in your area. If you're not sure, you can go online and Google Caregiver Navigators. You're probably going to find a lot of consultants, but that's where you get to pick and choose. You don't have to make immediate decisions, or you can rely on other friends in support groups that will say, hey, this is what I did. This is who I called. This is where I found the most help. Don't feel like you're doing this alone. I know many of us will eventually reach this stage. We will see burnout and we will push through it. But keep in mind, we don't have to feel like we are limited once we reach our limitations. There's a difference in recognizing your limitations and trying to stay in that space or pushing past them. The systems that we are having to navigate within are limited by nature, by design. There is rarely anything out there that is from beginning to end all the services we need. We have to combine many services together because in the end, we have to treat people as human beings, but we may not also have that option as a caregiver to find a service in the moment, especially if we're panicked, that will be person-centered or people-centered to provide the care that we need versus a service that's for profit. We're not insurance codes. We're not dollar signs. We're caregivers, and we need the help. We need the resources. We need the understanding. Once you acknowledge this and you find someone to reach out to, you're probably going to feel a lot of weight come off your shoulder because you're going to feel like someone else out there understands. You're normal to want to do it all, but eventually accepting I can't do it all. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this gave you a little bit more food for thought. For more information, you can go to proactivecaregiver.com. And until next time, everybody, take care. Be proactive.